Hey channel, Fernando from SkyFi Audio. Now I've been waiting for this day for a few months now, and I'm super excited to bring you the new release of the Klipsch Scala speaker. Our absolute favorite Klipsch speaker has been completely redesigned. In this video, I'm going to do what I usually do with Klipsch speakers. I am going to take them apart, show you how they're built. I'm going to go over all the upgrades, because really I think every driver has been redesigned in the Scala. It is now an active system, which is a bit of a complex topic, but I'm going to try to distill that for you. I am going to go over the features, functionality, the price changes, the changes in finishes. And then, of course, I'm going to talk about how they sound and what the improvements have been, because this has been coming a long time. It really turned out super nice. Now, it's not just the Scala that's been redesigned. The Klipsch horn has been redesigned as well. It's also gone active, and it's had a new horn put in it, as well as redesign of the tweeters. In order for it to become an active speaker or an optionally active speaker, has brought some complexity that we're not used to. So I'm going to spend some time looking at the back of the Scala. I'm going to look at all the connections they've added to it. I'm also going to look at the back of the active crossover and show you how an active system would be configured or connected. I've got some really cool slides from Klipsch showing what the frequency responses are and what the changes in terms of the performance has been. And then I'm going to tell you or express how they sound. You know, I'm very, very familiar with the Scala. It's one of the speakers I've actually sold the most of. It's one of my absolute favorites. It's what I have at home at this point. I think I'm in a good position to compare the two for you. And then, of course, how you would choose between a fully active system versus a passive system. I've also have a bunch of slides on what amplifiers would work well with this. I've spoken to some of the engineers or the product specialists at McIntosh, and I've put together 4 or 5 slides for you outlining different amplifier combinations that would work well with this. Now in this video, I'm only going to listen to the passive system, the equalizer, or the active crossover, and these speakers will ship back up to SkyFi in Glen Rock, New Jersey, and I'll do a subsequent video on the active setup, because it's just too much to cover all at once. Now, if you're a fan of the channel, you'll notice that I am not in my living room here in Miami. I am at Soundlux in Wynwood, the coolest neighborhood in Miami, and absolutely the best hi-fi store that you'll find in the South Florida area. Look at this place. It's absolutely insane. Thank you so much to Soundlux for letting me use the space for this video. I'm going to do a separate video where I'm going to walk through the entire space for you, because there's so much to look at, almost too much to cover in this video. So I'll link below. Actually, it's not done yet, so subscribe to the channel, and you'll see it when it launches. Also, if you're in the market for Klipsch speakers, I've got 2 good alternatives for you. If you're in the South Florida market, please do support Soundlux. They do an amazing job at displaying, demoing. They carry most of the Klipsch line as well. They're super familiar with it and will take great care of you. So if you're local and you need a pair of speakers delivered, installed, and really any other sort of gear as well, please give them a chance. If not, skyfiaudio.com is our website. We are one of the top dealers of Klipsch in the country. We take amazing care of our clients. We manage the delivery all the way through to your door, and we won't leave you hanging. So please do consider us for your business. Oh, and also, guess what? We don't charge shipping on Klipsch product. And if you're outside of New Jersey, we also don't charge sales tax. We're a small enough company yet, so you could have a really nice savings between the delivery fees and the sales tax. Like always, my videos are organized with chapters, so you can kind of skip around. There are going to be some boring parts where I talk about specs and models and part numbers, so use the slider, jump around. You should be able to get to the best parts. I'd also like to give a big shout out to Klipsch and a thank you for getting us this review sample so early in the production run. Check this out. I think we've got number 3 serial number and number 4 serial number. This is a brand new color for Klipsch. It's called Auburn, and it is replacing the cherry that was not as popular as the walnut. This is a sort of a more brownish finish than the walnut, and more traditional. This is going to look maybe a bit better than the walnut in a more traditional home, rather than the sort of mid-century look of the walnut. So the 3 finishes are the black, the auburn, and the walnut. Now, one of the great secrets is that Klipsch makes speakers in just about any finish you want. They've got a catalog of, it's got to be 100 different veneers in there. You can custom order any finish you want. For example, we've done the Scala a bunch of times in like a light maple, and it's absolutely stunning. I was actually hoping that their 3rd finish was going to be either a light maple or a yellow oak finish, but no, they decided to go with Auburn. They are, in fact, shipping with the salt and pepper grill, which is some sort of plasticky fiber. Really good looking fabric for the black speaker. I'm not a fan of it on the wood tone, so I'd rather have it on this lamb's wool finish. Check this out. And If you buy from us, we actually know how to order the lamb's wood separately, so we can actually provide any of the wood finishes with that grill. You actually end up with 2 sets of grills, but it's a much nicer fabric. It's an actual, sort of cotton fabric, much more vintagey or a little bit more neutral in certain decors. The most notable change is the addition or the substitution of the old style horn. It used to use a K41 horn, and now it's using the K46, which is a Technics design, as you can witness by these dimples here. It's also a much shallower horn, it's less than half the depth of the original horn. The tweeter has had some changes as well, but they're not that visible from the front. And then, of course, the base cabinet has been redesigned, but visually it's identical to what it used to look like on the previous version. All right, let's have a look at this craziness in the back. And this is gonna maybe turn off some people, but hopefully this video will kind of help distill down to what's important. It will come configured just like this. So all these jumpers essentially come in place already. So you essentially connect your amplifier to any of these 3 tabs here. And this will just work beautifully as a passive speaker with an internal crossover, just like we're used to doing for ages now. And that's why this one is labeled passive network input. Now, if you wanted a biamp, just like you could on the original or the earlier Scalas, you would remove perhaps this jumper here and set up one amplifier for the low frequencies and another amplifier for both of the high frequencies. Or if you wanted a triamp, that means using the internal crossover and 3 amplifiers, you could remove all these jumpers and hook up 6 channels of amplification, 3 to each speaker. All right, scenario 2 is if you're using active amplification. So you purchase the DSP module from Klipsch separately, and you're going to have 3 channels of amplification per speaker. You're going to remove all these jumpers right here. These become superfluous at that point. And you essentially hook up one amplifier to the high frequency, another amplifier to the mid frequency, and another amplifier to the low frequencies. What you didn't see me do off camera was connect the top cabinet to the bottom cabinet. That is done exactly the same way as it's always been done, or at least for the last generation or 2. But it's essentially a 2-man job. You have to have someone hold this top section just shy of where it needs to be so you can get your hand in there and make the necessary connection. Now guys, I ask you, if you like these videos and you like the content, please like and subscribe and leave a comment. That really helps promote the videos and keep them coming your way. So thank you in advance for helping out. Going back to finishes, it's important to note that the American Auburn is now available all across the Heritage lineup, and that includes the Klipsch horn, the Scala, the Cornroll, the Forte, and the Heresy. Outgoing is the Natural Cherry and the Distressed Oak. This slide illustrates the changes that have happened. The left column is the AL5, the right column is the AL6. And the first most notable thing, the bad news, is it's gone up from $6,500 to $7,500 per speaker. Big price increase, but man, are we getting a bunch of new stuff with it. So starting with the K711, the high frequency driver, the tweeter essentially, has retained its design but at the driver level, but it has now an extended face plug that is said to aid with dispersion. Now this is the same face plug that's available at the rest of the Heritage line, and finally the Scala and the Klipsch horn are now blessed with it. The mid frequencies, the K55 compression driver has been replaced with the K1133. Now a huge difference is the size of the driver. It's gone from 2 inches to a full 3 inches. Super nice upgrade there. The horn completely redesigned. K401 is outgoing, the K406 is incoming. Much shorter horn, much better design. This is computer-aided stuff at this point, using the Technics lumps that you see all over it. For the low frequency, the woofer, it's been replaced. We've gone from the 15-inch to the 12-inch, and this is an important change. And despite the size difference, the new woofer has a much larger magnet and a much larger voice coil, which really helps it deliver that punch. To manage the new drivers and facilitate the extended bass response, the internal crossover has completely been redesigned. It now features a ton of copper, enough to sink a ship, and which we'll see later in the video when we crack open the top cabinet. And of course now the active crossover is an optional add-on that is sold separately at this point. The Heritage Active crossover will be available separately for $34.99. This graph really illustrates the difference between the active and the passive setup. The red line is in fact the passive, while the black line is the active. You do see a little bit of a bump around 40 Hertz, or a better performance from the active system. And you generally across the board see a much sort of flatter frequency response, which is really what we want in a speaker. And now we're able to control that digitally, where it's much more difficult to do that with a passive crossover. The digital or the active also provides much better time alignment, and that results in better imaging. Now, I've never really felt that the AL5 was shy in the bass region. I thought it provided a really realistic, sort of punchy experience, and that's probably because of the folded horn design and the very, very low distortion, and the fact that all the energy was essentially going forward at you. Now, people have asked and said, please, please, please give us a little bit more bass. Now, that's only going to be really noticeable in some of the more modern music. Some of the electronica and the hip hop uses that super low registers. Again, I've always liked the frequency or the bass response, and now we've got both. We've got another 10 Hertz essentially to play with. Now let's discuss amplification. Now we're a McIntosh dealer. We love the brand. It matches really, really well with Klipsch speakers. So I'm going to focus a bit on McIntosh. I spoke to legendary Ken Zellin at McIntosh, one of the product managers. He's been there forever, knows the stuff called. I said, Ken, what would be the really nice setup with these new active systems? And we're going to cover that in these few slides. Now, if you're not going active, a passive system, my absolute favorite amplifier is the McIntosh MC275. It's been around for 70 years, beautifully built, great value, and right at the sweet spot for the Scalas. More power than you will ever need. You probably only need around 20 watts, so having that extra headroom is nice. And unfortunately, McIntosh today does not make anything smaller than 75 watts. If they did, I'd probably go with that. We've sold these speakers a lot with vintage McIntosh MC225, which is a 25 watter. That's a beautiful piece. The MC240 is also works really well with it, as well as some of the smaller tube monoblocks. Now for a preamp, I absolutely love the C22, also tubed. All analog unit, no digital stuff in it whatsoever. Works really well with the 275. The next setup would be essentially the next configuration would be a huge step up from there. Now we're going to 3 amplifiers. Now this is not an active system yet. You can still go through 3 amplifiers and just essentially triamp the speaker using the internal crossover. So for that, we've chosen a 275 for the high frequencies. We've chosen a second 275 for the mids, and the MC311, which is a solid state 300 watt amplifier for the bass cabinets. Now this is insane. You don't need this much power, but I know there's a lot of people out there that swear by having all that extra headroom. Now if you're going to go into the active domain, this is the ultimate setup from McIntosh. These are AMC 303s. Again, a ridiculous amount of power, but now we're talking about 6 channels of amplification using autofarmers, which is really the magic sauce for McIntosh amplifiers. Now if you wanted a more compact active setup, the MI502 would be a perfect candidate for it. Again, a ridiculous amount of power, but in a much smaller chassis. You can see there's 6 meters, 1 for each driver, totaling 6. This diagram shows how the active crossover would be connected. On the left side, you've got a preamp output using XLRs. On the right side, you've got RCA. Either of these available for you at the flip of a switch. This slide shows how you would connect amplifiers. Note that this is from the Jubilee, which is a 2-channel system. So we are missing a set of amplifiers, but this illustrates how you would connect both XLR and RCA to each of the amplifiers. And the pigtail going to the bass cabinet, I do wish it'd give us another 4 or 5 inches. It's a real tricky affair propping this cabinet on top of the other one while you make these connections. So a little more breathing room would have been super nice. Let's take a good look at the newly redesigned woofer cabinet. The crossover ships like this. We've got two little boxes on the side, a bunch of power cords. So I suspect this unit is going to be universal voltage, which means it can be used anywhere in the world without any sort of messing around internally. And then we've got some rack ears that are optionally installed and some feet, I suspect, and these little plugs here to fill up any holes that we've got. On the front panel, we see exactly the same controls we've seen before on the Jubilees. All we've got is a power button and then two adjustments. One is for low frequency gain right here. This is to extend your low frequencies, the bass, and this is for the high frequencies. Now, one would have maybe expected to have three knobs, since this is in fact a three-way system, but I think for convenience and for ease of use, they've grouped the high frequencies and mid-range into one knob. In terms of construction, this is finished in a black finish, very similar to what you would have seen on the speakers themselves. So it's a kind of semi-translucid black finish on a really nice veneer. While I don't have the manual with me, because this is an early production, I suspect that you would remove the cover in order to put the rack ears onto it. Probably there's a metal cover below this one. The back is pretty extensive, and we essentially have two groupings of connectors. We've got single-ended RCA jacks, and then we've got just about every jack on an XLR balance connector. Starting from the left, we've got a power cord, a power control button, which essentially lets you decide whether the power is turned on automatically or manually. The input type is where we would select between balance and single-ended. The pad looks like a 0 to -9 dB adjustment. A service port, which we don't use. These are the inputs. So from your preamp, you're going to go into one of these two sets of inputs. And this is essentially our outputs. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs. Now you'll notice there are actually more than we need. I suspect something, or at least two of these ports, likely the last two are reserved for something in the future. But for now, our outputs are going to go to 3 amplifiers. So this would be amplifier for the, I'm not sure the correct order, but bass, mid-range, and treble. When we get the manual, we'll have a better idea of that. And then the exact same things here in an unbalanced fashion. Now this switch here looks like is just for the input. So you would choose either RCA or XLR right from here. And I'm guessing that all the outputs are active, both XLR or RCAs, but I'm not quite sure yet. That would be a nice sort of feature, because not everyone has a fully balanced or fully single-ended system. So it'd be nice, for example, to come into this thing with XLRs and leave with RCAs or XLRs, depending on what you've got. As of now, I don't have any indication that there's going to be different colors available for the cabinet of the crossover. It would have been nice to have had let's say a walnut, for example. That's super popular nowadays. But I realize if you're going to pick one color, to kind of manage the number of SKUs you've got, black would definitely be it. So I've spent some time now listening to Les Scalas, and I've got a few sort of early impressions. And I mean early because these were just cracked out of the box, right? So they haven't been broken in. Vintage styled woofers in particular need an extended period break-in to really perform at their level. So everything I'm going to say is with a bit of a disclaimer. So I've listened to two songs that we hear all the time at the shop. It's sort of our go-to tunes. I'm sure you guys have heard them before. You see them on demos all the time. So These Bones by the Fairfield 4. It has a great male voice in it, very low registers. It performed beautifully. And the soundstage, I was concerned that maybe the new horns were going to affect it, but it really got even bigger and more holographic than the old style. Super happy that hasn't really shifted in the wrong direction. And then I played B.B. King Blues 2 Boys tune, which is one of my favorite sort of blues rock tunes. And what I did notice is that there was more bass presence in some of the lower notes. It gave a nice little punch that wasn't there before, but I did notice it had to be pushed a bit right now in order to get that punch out of them, and that's because they haven't been broken in just yet. So very promising, the bass registers. I see some great improvements in it, but it's going to have at least 10-20 hours worth of break-in to really come through. So the next video we do will be at the shop, and we will have broken these in, and we will have an active setup for you. The other thing worth noting, and this wasn't a comment by me, but for someone, the staff here at Soundlux, they had some time to spend with the speakers as well. And they tried it first on this Virtuos A100, which is a 100-watt amplifier. So it's 4 tubes running 100 watts, and then switched over to this one, which is 40 watts. And they unanimously voted on the 40 watt being a better choice for this, which is consistent with what we found with most Klipsch speakers. They're super high efficiency. They do not need a lot of power in order to be articulate and precise. They mostly like the 40 for the soundstage, the depth, and the imaging. It did outshine the 100 watts. So keep that in mind. I will cover a bunch of amplifier options. I also did notice from the frequency curves that we're going to get even more bass extension once we go active. So I'm curious to see what that's going to sound like. So in a nutshell, if you like the old La Scalas, this is just a bit more of everything, just right in the sweet spot. I really enjoyed making this video for you. Absolutely love the Klipsch product line, and the Scala being my absolute favorite. This was a delight to make. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a comment, and of course, support Soundlux here in Wynwood in Miami. Link in the comments for you as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2 when we feature some of the songs, and then part 3 where we go in active system